Hey all, hello and welcome, Tony Bing here. For this beginner's guide we will look at the mighty Thor. Now he really is a great character with a very strong melee and range build, and his visual effects, as you can see at the moment, are really pretty fantastic as well. So in this particular video we will look at his primary attributes and offensive and defensive traits and his resource first. We'll then check out a few of his costumes. We'll then have a look at his signature and ultimate. And finishing up, we'll do a run through of a few operations, and during them we will check out his melee skills first, and then we'll finish up by looking at the range skills. So first off anyway, we'll have a look at his primary attributes, his traits and also his resource. First off then we'll look at his offensive trait, and that is Asgardian strength. So he has a 5% flat brutal strike chance. Archetype is Paragon, and that means he gains a bonus from the strength and energy attributes. For his defensive trait, I'm going to be lazy and just call this Drassel's Boon, because I have no idea how you say the first part of this. Now he gains bonus health, the archetype is tough, he has a defense and deflect multiplier, and he also has the close quarters there, so when you hit with a melee attack you get the 8% damage reduction as well. Now for the resource, it's a secondary resource. His primary resource is just Spirit, but the secondary resource is Odin Force. So with this you charge Mjolnir with Odin Force using specific powers, and when you have at least one bar you're considered imbued with Odin Force, and various different skills will have different effects if you are considered imbued with actual Odin Force. And what happens as well is for each bar you gain 3% more damage, so 3 bars you're getting up to 9% there. Now Odin Force will decay over time, I'll just mention that as well. But with us looked at the offensive and defensive traits and resource, let's now check out some of his costumes. So we start off by looking at his default costume, and this is a modern one. It really does look great. It does look like he could do with a bit more fibre in his diet, but other than that it really is quite a nice costume. We then have an enhanced costume, and this is Jane Foster. So this is great for someone that's a fan of that particular character and looking to actually play her. So it's a nice costume there, and it's good that the option is available. Finishing up we have the Age of Ultron from the recent movie, and this really does look nice, and it's a good faithful adaptation from that particular film. But with the costumes out of the way, let's now have a look at the signature and ultimate. For the signature we have a pretty nice looking skill, and this is called the Anti-Force. Now with this it has a 100% critical hit chance. It also gains 50% critical hit and brutal strike damage, and also it will generate Odin Force as well. Then through talents we can have it where we can build up 2 charges, so we can fire it off in quick succession to burn down enemies. But let's now have a look at the ultimate skill. For the ultimate then, we have a skill called God Blast. Now with this, as it's stating, Mjolnir emits the ultimate expression of its power, so that sounds pretty awesome there. Now the active damage portion on it is a dot, and that's channeled for just over 6 seconds. The actual buff effect on it gives you as well, which lasts for 20 seconds, is a 20% critical hit and brutal strike chance. You also regenerate 10% of your max health per second, and on top of that you will generate 25 Odin Force per second as well there. So that's a really nice ultimate skill, and it looks pretty fantastic as well. So with us looked at all that, let's now have a look at the melee skills that he's got, and we'll do that with a quick run through of the Shocker Terminal. The first skill we look at here from the melee side of things is Hammer Strike, which is his main spender, and that's actually classed as a basic. So with this you'll do both physical and energy damage on enemies. You'll hit up to 5 enemies, because when you strike them you can see all the lightning bolts fan out it, so it can be really good for single target or for actually taking out trash. Now it gains a 3% critical hit chance per bar of Odin Force, so that's up to 9% critical hit chance it can have there. We then have our Crashdown skill, and that's Asgardian Smite. This has knockdown and weaken on it, and it will also generate Odin Force as well. So I like this, the actual visual for it looks really quite fantastic. The next skill up we have is Hammer Smash, and this is great to use after your Crashdown skill. So with this, slam Mjolnir into the ground, knock down enemies, and you make them vulnerable as well there. So use Smite for the weaken, and then quickly do the Hammer Smash for the vulnerability as well. The next skill we look at is Ragnarok, and now with this one you must actually be imbued with Odin Force in order to activate it. So you'll slam down a huge amount of lightning and it knocks down the enemies, and it does bonus damage to enemies in the centre of the area. Now through talents you can actually change this to a ranged version of the skill, and on the subject of that I'll quickly mention that your Hammer Strike, which is your main spender, through talents you can actually change that to a ranged spender as well, which is really quite an interesting mechanic there. The next skill then would be Spinning Strike. Now this one is actually a knock up, so with 4 you've really either got knock ups or knock downs, which is pretty great for keeping the enemy stunned. Like the last skill we looked at, you must be imbued with Odin Force to actually activate this, and it is actually an execute as well. The actual animation doesn't look too great, but the fact it's an execute, it does make it really quite powerful if you use it at the right time. The final skill we look at, this is called Lightning Storm, and this is a good trash clearing skill. So you'll spin round Mjolnir and you'll create a maelstrom of lightning round you. Now it slows the enemy, and also it will generate Odin Force, and something which is pretty great and I like from a flavour point of view, while you're spinning it round you'll deflect and also deflect projectiles. You've got a 25% chance to do that, so I really do like that. It makes sense that you're spinning it round and projectiles are flying back at enemies as you do it, so that's nice. But let's fire off all these skills here on Shocker. There's a crash down there, that's Asgardian Smite, you could see that. And that's us, nice way to finish that off there. So what we'll do is we'll now have a look at the range skills he's got, and the visual effects on these are really over the top. So starting off with the range skills, we look at the main spender, and that's Crack the Sky. Now this is great because while you're actually imbued with Odin Force, it will hit up to 3 targets. So as you can see here, when I'm firing it off on these mobs, it's taking them out really quite easy. It also has an additional critical hit chance based on how many pips you actually have in the Odin Force bar. We then look at the next skill, and this is our Vulnerability Applicator, which is Bring the Thunder. This will also slow the enemies as well. It's got an 8-second duration on it. Next up we have Rolling Thunder. So you'll slam Mjolnir into the ground and you create an electrified fissure. So with this, if you're imbued with Odin Force, it will actually have a dot damage portion to it as well as the initial damage packet as well there. The duration in this is also 8 seconds. We then look at the next skill, and this would be Hammer of Storms, which is awesome. So you're throwing Mjolnir, and as you're throwing it and it's going through enemies, you've got lightning arcing off it. You could see I just fired it off there. I really do like that, very iconic skill for Thor to use. Next up we have the Son of Odin. Now with this one, it actually casts lightning all over the screen, and it will seek out enemies, and the more enemies you hit, the more spirit you actually restore. So this is really quite a useful skill. It will also generate Odin Force as well. Now we then look at a steroid. This is called For Asgard. So with this you must have Odin Force in order to activate it, but you gain a huge strength and energy bonus, 5 to each of those stats. You gain critical hit damage, attack and move speed, and also health and hit, and you're looking at a 50% uptime on this with the 10-second duration, 20-second cooldown, so that's pretty great. Final skill we look at is another great looking one, and it's actually very useful for clearing out trash. This is Fork Lightning. So it's an energy damage dot. It gains a bonus based on your actual attack speed, and it will also generate Odin Force as well. So we'll just fire off all these skills together now so you can see the visual effects on them, and as I mentioned earlier on in the video, you can see it really does look pretty fantastic. And that's us done. So that was great. I hope this particular beginner's guide video was useful. It was a nice fun one to do because Thor really is a bit of a beast at the moment. Now what I'll do, the only hero I can really follow up with a Thor video would have to be Hulk, another similarly beastly like hero, so keep an eye out for that in the next day or two, and thanks for tuning in for this video, and I'll see you all again soon.